Alright, welcome back to the channel everybody, and if you're new, you might as well go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now, because chances are you're gonna like what you see. And real quick, if you're not getting notifications, just turn the notifications off and then turn them right back on, and that should fix it. Alright, on to what today's video is. Today's video, I have a viewer to send in his encounter, and I also have a report from Ontario, Canada. Now the first encounter you guys are going to really like. Listen, it's from a guy that survived the Mt Saint Helens eruption, and you're going to hear all about his harrowing time. And then after he survives the encounter, you're going to hear all about his account of seeing a Bigfoot being swept away in the mud flow in the river, fighting for its life. It's really dramatic. And then a few days later, he finds a body in a mud flow, and he gives a lot of description, and it's really interesting the way he describes the creature. You guys aren't going to want to miss it. And then the second encounter, a rabbit hunter stumbles across a Bigfoot in a blueberry patch. Alright, let's go ahead and let's get to these. On May 18th, 1980, I had just turned 14. I have a brother that is 14 months older than me, and most of our friends were older with cars that could drive. When Mt Saint Helens erupted, on that day I lived 20 miles south of it, but I was in the Toutle River area with a friend fishing. That area is breathtakingly beautiful and pristine. We were west of the foot of the mountains, about 8 miles away probably. When it erupted, we heard nothing, but felt the ground move like a low audible sound with ground movement to match the sounds. There were up and downs, side waves, and shaking. Bump, bump, crack, crack, rumble, then two large, hard bang bangs, then nothing. We both looked at each other nervously while unconsciously reeling in our fishing line slowly. We then heard a strange sound, like something coming our way and getting louder fast. Then we saw and heard this wind blast come over the ridge in front of us. 1 second later, it came around the slope and curved in the river from our left. We were facing Mt Saint Helens, but couldn't see it due to the hill between us. The wind hit like a speeding semi-truck. Shit flew everywhere. Then dirt and dust darkened the area. I think at that point we both must have dropped our poles and were headed towards the truck 15 minutes walk away. We both bumped into each other as we took cover behind a large fir tree surrounded by large bushes. Then we realized the ground was shaking very hard, an earthquake that just kept going. The wind stopped abruptly and was still, but the sounds and the ground shaking was not. We turned and raced each other up the embankment, and then down the trail and up a small incline up a hill. As we did, reality became clearer and clearer behind us as we went up in the elevation and the sky opened up around us. The sounds and shaking had a direction it was coming from, and that direction was Mt Saint Helens, and she was really pissed. As I turned, I could see, and a dreamlike state came over me. I stood there like a deer in headlights. I watched in ultra slow motion the top and the side of the mountains, just crossing the area where Spirit Lake was. And the blast was rocketing up and out towards the north. It was just unreal. The size of the pristine, ancient mountain and forest was just moving north in a slow motion, in turbulent, swirling black, white, and gray hell, replacing its calm beauty. I could see the glacier pack and the snow tumbling and moving off the sides of the blast and the mountain, straight into the drainage valleys that feed the Toutle River. The Toutle River winds, but it was all headed to where I was. I don't even know how much time passed. I was still in that dream-like state. I became numb. I don't remember hearing or feeling anything about my body, just everything I was seeing. Everything was vivid and being recorded in my mind, burned into my brain. Every little and big thing moving I saw. My brain must have went into some super hyper-aware mode visually. The river started to speed up and then rise. All of a sudden, a massive wave of mud, trees, logs, rocks, and huge massive boulders came around the river bend.
At 10:15 this morning, the Cowlitz County reported that a 12-foot wall of water was coming down the Toutle River, and this was verified by the Washington State Patrol.
Out of nowhere, it seemed, was riding on top of the clean water, moving faster than it was. My God, it was the most terrifying thing I ever saw, felt, went through. Everything lay before me was unreal. You don't understand what it does to your entire being watching all of that go from beautiful and safe to hell and helplessness like that, unless you were there. As I came out of my dreamlike state and all senses returned, I heard my friend crying and turned to see him sitting on the ground with his face in his hands on his knees. I went and put my arm around his back and put my head on top of his and said, "It's okay, bro. We are alive." He said, "Shit, I really like this fishing spot and I just washed my car." I stood up confused and laughed so hard I almost had to pee. As the day progressed, we saw people going up and people coming away from the mountains. We walked to where a bridge crosses the river. Many people and news crews were there. The bridge was being overrun by the mud, trees, and boulders-filled river, and torn from her concrete pillars and the footings on the land. Then it went up in a jerk motion and was gone. The massive churning mess of what was a normal river was now wide and high and grinding the channel away, changing its very path in some places. I was watching all this and listening to the news people reporting and interviewing when I saw it. A huge, hairy, mud-covered thing throwing its arms up and out, trying to grasp anything and everything. As it passed under and 15 feet in front of me, it was trying to reach a tree or a log just to have it turn and twist and disappear down into the torment it was floating in. As it passed me, it looked straight up at me and we locked eyes. I could feel its emotions. Fear, confusion, even determination to survive. It passed by. Then it started to grab a tree and a log just to have it turn and twist and disappear down into the torment it was floating in. Then it went down and I did not see it come back up. I saw 3 that day in the river and 2 moving through the woods down the river away from the mountain. We went late that night back to my friend's parents' house around 4 miles away and back to the same area before the sunrise for the next 3 days. On the last day, about 9 a.m., we found a half-buried one in the hard mud. Only its torso, arms, and head stuck out. It was laying on its back looking up, eyes open. This was further down river where the mud flows were very wide and flat. There were no prints anywhere in the mud. No one knew it was there. We both studied this hairy, huge person. It was not an ape or any animal. It was so human-like, but on a huge scale. There was a difference. It was all hairy, all but its face. Ears looked rather small for its size, and flat against its head. Black to dark gray skin. It was a male. Yellow teeth. It was all muscles, very huge defined muscles, and more than we have. Like its arms, neck, and shoulders all had muscles that we do not have layered over each other. It did not look like a monster. It looked like a human, just huge, maybe 9 feet tall, over 4 foot across the shoulder without a doubt. Fingernails looked like it had lived in the woods all of its life. Its face was stout, strong, and rough. Chiseled, hard-working mountain man look. Its forehead, cheeks, nose, and throat were void of hair. It had eyebrows and lashes. I took 4 pictures from different angles, but the 110 camera film made the pictures look yellow and underexposed. Since then, I have had many contacts or sightings, but I have never felt fear from them. Maybe they have never felt fear for me either, and that's why I see them. I have had 7 encounters in 4 different states. All but 2 have occurred in the last 5 years. One lasted over a year long as they lived in the woods behind me. I have a recording of them talking and photos of a family of 5 up in a dead tree in the Rocky Mountains near Yellowstone. Those Sasquatch look even more human. The face of the young female was actually attractive. The dad had a bald head in the front going back. They are not apes or animals. They're so much like us. They just want to live and be left alone. Alright, now this next account is going to take us to Ontario, Canada in 1986. There are 2 separate incidents I would like to report, both of which happened many years ago in the same location but on separate ends of my hometown in northeastern Ontario. The first happened when I was only 5 years old, and I never spoke of it until now because it wasn't until I was older that I knew and understood what I had seen. In fact, my realization prompted me to do a report on Bigfoot when I was in grade 6 for a public speaking contest, in which I had received several awards going all the way to the Canadian Championships, for which I took 3rd place. However, I did not make mention of the sighting for reasons of disbelief and fear that it would affect the stability of my report. The first incident was in the summer of 1975, in the early morning hours, probably around 8:30 or so. My mother and I were walking along Government Road between Chapet Hughes and Kirkland Lake. In the distance, probably about 100 yards away, for only a few seconds, I seen what appeared to be a hair-covered creature that was walking in an upright position along a swampy area on the west side of town. By the time I got my mother's attention, the creature had vanished into the woods. The second sighting was more intense, because it was after I had done the public speaking report and I knew what I was seeing and I was self-educated on the subject. I actually sat and watched for about 10 minutes before I was detected and the creature calmly stood and walked away. It was in the late afternoon in September of 1986 when I was out rabbit hunting. I had been in the bush all day since about 7 a.m. As I was en route for home, about 3 miles southeast of town, walking along a trail that I had hunted on a regular basis, I seen something out of the corner of my eye, which until I had turned my head, looked and focused my eyes in the slowly darkening bush, thought was a bear. The reason I thought it was a bear was because I was able to smell it. At the time, I thought it was strange, but it actually smelled worse than a bear, like 10 times worse. When I realized what I was seeing, I instinctively crouched out of view, but still in a position to view this amazing creature. It sat on the ground in a yoga-style cross-legged position, smack dab in the middle of a blueberry patch. It was just sitting there grazing the berries with its hands and having an afternoon snack. It seemed to be content with the surroundings it was in. It had a massive body that would probably only be comparable to Andre the Giant, maybe even bigger. It was completely covered with hair, except the area around its breast, which appeared to resemble a dark leathery texture. The face of the creature was not masked with hair. It resembled the face of a gorilla in texture and color, but had the features of an early evolutionary man. As I sat there watching from about 12 yards away, I had considered raising my gun and taking a shot. Crazy. I opted against this because I have morals, and was unsure if it was more of a man than it was of an animal. Plus, I didn't want to take a chance of missing or wounding it. I only had a single shot 22 bolt action, and if it chose to attack in retaliation, I would not have had time to reload. I watched for about 10 minutes. Then I had to reveal myself, for it was starting to get dark. And not because of the Bigfoot, but you do not want to be in the bush of northern Ontario, even if you know where you are going after dark. When the creature saw me, it did not respond in the way I had expected. It just simply stood without the use of his hands and calmly walked away. And here is the follow-up investigating report. During an interview, the witness provided the following additional details. The Bigfoot was about 7 feet tall with very broad shoulders and a muscular build. It had brownish black hair, which was thin around the chest. Its skin was leathery and had a dark gray to black color. It had a short, wide nose. The whites of the eyes were ash gray, and the pupils were large and black. It had a wide mouth with full-looking lips. The Bigfoot was sitting cross-legged, not true yoga style, and was moving its torso as it reached for different areas in the blueberry patch. It had blueberries in its hands when it stood, and it walked away from the witness and disappeared into the brush about 15 to 20 seconds later. Although the Bigfoot looked in the direction of the witness immediately before rising, the witness is not positive that the Bigfoot actually saw him. It may have just heard him. The witness believes that the Bigfoot did not smell him because there was no wind and because he was using the full line of scent-away, scent-neutralizing products. The witness felt no fear during the parts of the sighting. I am struck by a similarity between this report and Albert Ostman's story of being abducted by a Bigfoot in British Columbia in 1924. In John Green's book Sasquatch, The Apes Among Us, and WILLSTAR's video, Albert Ostman stated they were very agile. To sit down, they turned their knees out and came straight down. In this report, the witness stated that it sat on the ground in a yoga-style cross-legged position. And again, Albert Ostman, to rise, they came straight up without the use of hands or arms. And our witness, it just simply stood without the use of his hands and calmly walked away. Alright, so there you have it. What do you think about those two accounts? That first one by Mt Saint Helens, my oh my, could you imagine living through that and then seeing those bodies? But first of all, the crazy thing would be living through that eruption. Good thing they were out to the west because the whole eruption of Mt Saint Helens was basically to the north. That's why you see all the land around Mt Saint Helens to the west, the south, and the east not really touched. That is why Ape Canyon is still there, because Mt Saint Helens erupted to the north and wiped out the Spirit Lake area and all of that. I hope you guys liked the video. As always, make sure you leave me some comments. Let me know what you thought about these accounts. If you liked the video, go ahead and hit that like button for me. And if you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe. What are you waiting for? I give you these accounts and I show you the locations. Once again, thank you everybody for all the well wishes. I'm feeling better, a little stopped up still, but hey, that'll pass with time. Always remember everybody, where there is a WILLSTAR, there is definitely a way. And we will talk to you later. WILLSTAR out.